The reign of Darius II, lasting nearly 2 decades from 423 to 404 BCE, is depicted in the available sources as a period fraught with internal problems. His rule seems characterized by frequent satrapal revolts, pervasive court intrigue, and a discernible weakening of central control over the vast empire. Darius II appears to have been significantly dependent on the powerful figures who helped bring him to power and sustain his rule. Chief among these was his wife and half-sister, Queen Parysatis, whose influence seems to have been paramount. A daughter of Artaxerxes I, and thus half-sister to her husband Darius II, she was the mother of his eventual successor, Artaxerxes II, and the famously ambitious Cyrus the Younger. Sources like Ctesias portray her as a dominant political force, deeply involved in the machinations of the court. She is depicted as highly intelligent, politically astute, fiercely ambitious, and often ruthless in pursuing her goals and protecting her interests, particularly those of her favored son, Cyrus. Her support was instrumental in Darius securing and maintaining the throne, and Ctesias suggests the king was heavily reliant on her counsel. Beyond personal influence, Parysatis commanded significant material resources, holding extensive lands and villages across the empire, particularly in Babylonia, Syria, and Media, with dedicated administrators managing her estates and tax collections. Her influence extended dramatically into the reign of her elder son, Artaxerxes II. Parysatis' long and impactful career serves as a powerful illustration of the significant political agency wielded by certain royal women within the Achaemenid system. Figures like the Queen Mother or the king's principal wife were not merely confined to the harem, but could function as major political players. They controlled wealth, influenced policy and appointments, participated actively in factional struggles, managed complex networks of informants and clients, and decisively shaped the course of dynastic politics and imperial affairs, operating within the intricate power dynamics of the royal court. It is crucial, however, to acknowledge the limitations and potential biases of our sources. Much of the detailed narrative, especially concerning court life and motivations, comes from Ctesias. While Ctesias served as physician at the Persian court under Darius II's successor, Artaxerxes II, and thus had access to information, his historical work, Persica, is often criticized for prioritizing sensationalism and gossip over factual accuracy. The relative scarcity of contemporary Near Eastern textual evidence for this specific period further complicates efforts to achieve a balanced perspective on Darius II's reign. The internal instability characterizing Darius's reign manifested clearly in several major revolts led by powerful satraps and even members of the royal family. One of the earliest challenges came from Darius II's own full brother Arsites. Arsites, possibly satrap of Syria, allied himself with Artiphius, the son of Megabyzus, a direct link back to the previous generation's major satrapal rebellion. Darius dispatched a loyal Bactrian noble, Artaxerxes, to crush the revolt. The rebels, aided by Greek mercenaries, initially defeated the royal forces twice, but were overcome in a third engagement. The suppression involved not just military force, but also co-option. The Greek mercenaries fighting for Arsites and Artiphius were bribed to desert their cause. Following their surrender, Parysatis reportedly intervened, persuading Darius to spare Artiphius, but ensuring the execution of the king's brother Arsites. Another significant rebellion was staged by Pissuthnes, the satrap of Lydia. Pissuthnes was an established figure who had governed Lydia since the reign of Artaxerxes I. The revolt occurred early in Darius II's reign, but its specific cause remains unknown. Like Arsites, Pissuthnes employed Greek mercenaries commanded by an Athenian named Lycon. Darius II appointed Tissaphernes to put down the rebellion. Tissaphernes successfully employed bribery, inducing Lycon and the Greek mercenaries to abandon Pissuthnes. Having isolated the satrap, Tissaphernes lured him into negotiations with false promises of safety, then arrested him, sent him to Susa, where Darius II had him executed. Tissaphernes was rewarded with the satrapy of Lydia. However, the conflict lingered as Pissuthnes' illegitimate son, Amorges, continued the resistance in Caria for several years, significantly receiving support from Athens. This Athenian involvement would provide Persia with a pretext for intervening in the Peloponnesian War. The methods used to suppress these revolts reveal the Persian state's toolkit for maintaining imperial control. While military force under loyal commanders was deployed, it was often complemented by other strategies. Bribery proved effective in detaching crucial mercenary support from rebel leaders. Treacherous negotiations were used to capture opponents like Pissuthnes. This pragmatic blend of coercion and co-option suggests an awareness of the costs and potential difficulties of relying solely on military solutions to internal challenges. Beyond these major satrapal revolts, sources also mention the suppression of a revolt in Media and a campaign against the tribal Cajusians in the Zagros Mountains, hinting at broader unrest within the empire during Darius's reign. Perhaps the most significant and lasting blow to the integrity of the Persian Empire during Darius II's reign was the successful revolt and secession of Egypt. After the suppression of Aneros's rebellion decades earlier, Egypt had remained relatively quiet under the long governorship of the Achaemenid Prince Arshama. However, simmering resentment likely persisted. Towards the end of Darius II's reign, around 411 or 410 BCE, signs of serious trouble emerged. A new rebellion gained momentum under the leadership of a figure named Amyatius, based in Sais in the Nile Delta. This Amyatius may have been the grandson of the Amyatius who had allied with Aneros in the earlier revolt, thus representing a continuing tradition of Egyptian resistance. Crucially, Persia's ability to respond effectively to this new Egyptian challenge was severely hampered. The empire was already dealing with instability at court, other regional revolts, and most significantly was deeply invested financially and diplomatically in the final decisive phase of the Peloponnesian War raging in the Aegean. Unlike Artaxerxes I, who could eventually muster overwhelming force under Megabyzus to crush Aneros, Darius II found his resources stretched thin. The subsequent succession crisis following Darius II's death in 404 BCE and the ensuing civil war between his sons Artaxerxes II and Cyrus the Younger further paralyzed any potential Persian counteroffensive against Egypt. Taking advantage of this Persian weakness and distraction, Amyatius succeeded where Aneros had failed. He managed to consolidate control over Egypt, expel the remaining Persian authorities, and establish himself as pharaoh, founding the native 28th dynasty. By the time Darius II died in Babylon in 404 BCE, Egypt was effectively an independent kingdom once more. It would remain outside direct Persian control for the next 60 years, until its reconquest by Artaxerxes III. The loss of Egypt was a major strategic and symbolic setback for the Achaemenid Empire. It deprived the empire of a wealthy and populous province, significantly diminishing its resources and manpower. More importantly, it exposed the growing vulnerability of the empire to internal dissent, particularly when the central government was weakened by its own internal strife or preoccupied with conflicts elsewhere. While grappling with internal revolts, the Persian Empire under Darius II saw a major opportunity arise on its western frontier. The long and exhausting Peloponnesian War between Athens and Sparta entered a critical phase following Athens' catastrophic defeat in its Sicilian expedition in 413 BCE. This disaster severely weakened Athens' military strength, particularly its navy, drained its treasury, and damaged its prestige, creating a power vacuum in the Aegean that Persia was quick to exploit. Persia had several motivations for intervening more decisively. A direct provocation came from Athens' continued support for Amorges, the rebellious son of the executed satrap Pissuthnes, who was operating in Caria within Persian territory. This Athenian interference provided Darius II with a clear casus belli. Around 413 BCE, the great king issued orders to his two key satraps in western Anatolia, Tissaphernes, the newly appointed satrap of Lydia and Caria, and Pharnabazus II, the hereditary satrap of Hellespontine Phrygia. Their instructions were twofold: first, to crush Amorges, and second, to begin demanding and collecting the tribute from the Greek cities along the Ionian coast that had been under Athenian control for decades. This second directive effectively amounted to a declaration of war against the weakened Athenian Empire, signaling Persia's intent to reclaim full sovereignty over the region. Tissaphernes and Pharnabazus became the primary agents of Persian policy in the Aegean theater. Although both served the same king, they were also rivals, competing for royal favor, resources, and influence in the region. Both satraps immediately saw the advantage of allying with Sparta, Athens' main enemy, to achieve the king's objectives. They approached the Spartans, offering Persian financial support to help rebuild and maintain the Peloponnesian fleet in exchange for Spartan cooperation against Athens. Initially, Tissaphernes' actions appeared somewhat ambiguous. Thucydides suggests that Tissaphernes, perhaps influenced by the cunning Athenian exile Alcibiades who had taken refuge with him, pursued a strategy of attrition. By providing inconsistent or delayed payments to the Spartan fleet and holding back the powerful Phoenician navy stationed in the eastern Mediterranean, Tissaphernes may have aimed to prolong the conflict and wear down both Athens and Sparta, thereby maximizing Persian leverage. However, some modern analyses question whether this was a deliberate strategy or simply a result of logistical difficulties, or perhaps even incompetent management. Despite any initial hesitation or maneuvering by Tissaphernes, the overarching Persian policy solidified into a firm alliance with Sparta, aimed at the complete defeat of Athens. Sparta, desperately needing funds and naval expertise to challenge Athenian sea power, proved willing to pay Persia's price, even if it meant abandoning its long-professed stance as the liberator of the Greeks. This alliance was formalized through a series of treaties negotiated primarily between Tissaphernes and Spartan commanders in 412 and 411 BCE, often referred to collectively as the Treaty of Miletus. Thucydides preserves the texts of 3 successive versions of this agreement, revealing an evolution in the terms as negotiations progressed. The core elements, however, remained consistent. Persia agreed to provide substantial financial subsidies to pay for the manning and upkeep of the Spartan fleet. Persia would also bear the cost of any Spartan troops operating within Persian territory at the king's request. Sparta formally recognized the great king's sovereignty over all territories in Asia that the king or his ancestors had previously held. This explicitly included the Greek cities of Ionia, effectively abandoning them to Persian rule, a major reversal of earlier Pan-Hellenic rhetoric. Both parties pledged to wage war jointly against Athens and its allies, and agreed not to conclude a separate peace. Mutual defense clauses against attacks on each other's territories were also included. These treaties represented a major diplomatic victory for Persia and a stark indication of Sparta's pragmatic desperation. Persia had successfully leveraged Sparta's need for financial backing to achieve its primary strategic goal, the acknowledged return of Ionia to the Persian sphere. Persian gold, the ever-present Daric coinage, now began to flow into Spartan coffers, becoming the crucial lubricant for the Peloponnesian war machine, particularly its naval arm. The Persian financial intervention reached its peak effectiveness with the arrival of Darius's younger son, Cyrus, in Asia Minor around 407 BCE. Appointed as Karanos, or supreme commander, with authority over several satrapies, Cyrus brought youthful energy and seemingly limitless resources to the Persian war effort. He quickly forged a strong personal and political bond with the highly capable Spartan admiral Lysander. Unlike Tissaphernes' sometimes parsimonious approach, Cyrus provided Lysander with consistent and substantial funding. This allowed Lysander not only to build and maintain a large, efficient fleet, but also to offer higher pay to his sailors, 4 obols a day instead of the standard 3, attracting the best crews and encouraging desertions from the financially strained Athenian navy. When Cyrus was recalled to his father's deathbed, he demonstrated his complete trust in Lysander by entrusting him with his entire treasury and the revenues from the cities under his command. This influx of Persian resources, likely fueled by Cyrus's own ambitions for the throne as much as by imperial policy, proved decisive. The culmination of this Persian-funded Spartan naval resurgence came at the Battle of Aegispotami in the Hellespont in 405 BCE. Lysander, commanding the Peloponnesian fleet, caught the Athenian navy completely unprepared at its anchorage and virtually annihilated it. Of the approximately 180 Athenian ships, only a handful, commanded by Canaan, managed to escape. The vast majority were captured or destroyed, and thousands of Athenian prisoners were executed. The impact of Aegispotami was immediate and catastrophic for Athens. The battle destroyed Athens' naval power, leaving the city defenseless at sea. Crucially, it severed the vital grain supply route from the Black Sea via the Hellespont, upon which Athens depended to feed its population. Lysander swiftly blockaded Athens' port Piraeus. Facing starvation and military encirclement, Athens was forced to surrender to Sparta in April 404 BCE, bringing the Peloponnesian War to an end. While Spartan military prowess was essential, the financial power provided by Persia, enabling the construction and effective operation of the Spartan navy under Lysander, was arguably the indispensable element that tipped the scales and led to Athens' final defeat. The defeat of Athens brought significant gains for the Persian Empire. Bound by the terms of the Treaty of Miletus and indebted to Persia for the financial support that had secured their victory, the Spartans were compelled to honor their side of the bargain. This meant allowing Persia to reassert direct control and reimpose tribute on the Greek cities of Ionia and western Anatolia. This outcome marked a major reversal of the political situation that had prevailed since the end of Xerxes' invasions and the establishment of the Delian League, and represented the successful culmination of decades of patient Persian diplomacy. By strategically intervening in the Peloponnesian War and exploiting Greek disunity, Persia had achieved its long-standing objective of regaining undisputed sovereignty in Western Asia Minor, a goal that direct military force had failed to secure in the earlier 5th century. Furthermore, Persia emerged from the Peloponnesian War not just having regained territory, but also having established itself as a powerful diplomatic force, almost an arbiter in the affairs of the weakened and divided Greek city-states. The period encompassing the reigns of Artaxerxes I and Darius II witnessed a significant and accelerating trend: the increasing power and autonomy of the great provincial governors, the satraps. While the Achaemenid system relied on these powerful officials to administer its vast territories, collect taxes, raise troops, and maintain order, their very success and the authority vested in them created potential challenges to central rule. Figures like Megabyzus in Syria, Pissuthnes in Lydia, Arsites in Egypt, and the rival satraps Tissaphernes and Pharnabazus in western Anatolia exemplify this phenomenon. These powerful satraps often commanded large personal armies, frequently supplemented by Greek or other mercenaries. They controlled vast economic resources within their provinces and increasingly engaged in independent diplomacy, negotiating treaties and alliances with neighboring powers or Greek city-states, sometimes without explicit direction from the royal court in Susa or Persepolis. In effect, some satraps began to rule their territories almost as hereditary fiefdoms or independent kingdoms, paying lip service to the great king while pursuing their own regional interests. Several factors contributed to this growing satrapal autonomy. The immense size of the empire and the inherent difficulties in communication across vast distances naturally fostered regional independence. The need for strong, capable governors to manage diverse populations and defend vulnerable frontiers necessitated granting them considerable authority. Furthermore, periods of weakness or distraction at the imperial center, particularly the succession crises following the deaths of Xerxes I and Artaxerxes I, and the internal instability under Darius II, created power vacuums that ambitious satraps could exploit. While power drifted towards some provincial centers, the royal court remained a critical arena of political influence and competition. However, power within the court itself was not solely concentrated in the hands of the great king. A complex ecosystem of influence existed, involving high officials, eunuchs, and notably the women of the royal family. Eunuchs often held positions of immense trust and proximity to the king within the royal household, giving them unique access and influence. Figures like Achaemenid, allegedly involved in Xerxes I's assassination, and Artaxerxes, who supported Darius II's rise but later plotted against him, demonstrate their potential political weight. They could act as key intermediaries, advisors, and agents in the intricate power struggles that characterized court life. Even more significant, particularly during the reigns of Artaxerxes I and Darius II, was the power wielded by royal women. The queen mother and the principal wife of the king could exert considerable pressure on the reigning king. This concentration of competing interests and informal power structures inevitably made the Persian court a hotbed of intrigue, factionalism, suspicion, and sometimes lethal violence. Against this backdrop of growing satrapal power and complex court politics, A figure emerged who would embody both trends and ultimately pose the most serious internal threat to the Achaemenid dynasty since its founding, Cyrus the Younger. The second son of Darius II and the influential Queen Parysatis, Cyrus was reportedly born after his father had ascended the throne, a fact he would later use to claim precedence over his elder brother, Artaxerxes II. From a young age, he was known for his energy, charisma, military aptitude, and burning ambition, qualities perhaps nurtured by his mother, who clearly favored him. Around 408 or 407 BCE, Darius II, likely persuaded by Parysatis, took the extraordinary step of appointing the teenage Cyrus, then only 15 or 16 years old, to a position of immense authority in western Anatolia. Cyrus was made satrap of multiple provinces, Lydia, Greater Phrygia, and Cappadocia, and simultaneously appointed supreme military commander of all Persian forces assembling on the plain of Castalis, effectively giving him vice-regal powers over a vast and critically important region. Cyrus threw himself into his new role with characteristic vigor. He established his own lavish court, likely based primarily in Sardis, mirroring the grandeur of the great king's court. He vigorously prosecuted the war against Athens, forging a crucial alliance with the Spartan admiral Lysander. Simultaneously, Cyrus used his position to consolidate his personal power. He cultivated loyalty among both Persian officials and the local populations, built up his military forces, amassed considerable wealth, and began acting with increasing independence. Xenophon notes incidents such as Cyrus executing two high-ranking Persians for failing to show him proper deference that hinted at his royal aspirations even before his father's death. The decision to grant such unprecedented power to a young, ambitious prince in a vital frontier region proved to be a fateful one. While it may have been intended to ensure a vigorous conclusion to the war against Athens, it simultaneously created a formidable power base for a potential rival to the throne. Cyrus's success as Karanos provided him with the resources, military experience, network of loyalists, including crucial Greek contacts, and perhaps the confidence needed to eventually challenge his brother. The simmering rivalry between the two eldest sons of Darius and Parysatis erupted into open conflict shortly after their father's death in 404 BCE. Arsaces, the elder son born before Darius became king, was the designated heir and ascended the throne under the name Artaxerxes II. Cyrus, however, believed he had a superior claim, arguing he was the first son born in the purple after Darius had become great king, an argument mirroring one used successfully by Xerxes I. Fueled by his ambition, his mother's support, and the power he wielded in Anatolia, Cyrus clearly intended to seize the throne. The tension came to a head during Artaxerxes II's coronation ceremonies at the ancient capital of Pasargadae. Cyrus had traveled from Sardis to court, summoned either by his dying father or by Parysatis. There, his long-standing rival, Tissaphernes, who had lost power due to Cyrus's appointment as Karanos, accused Cyrus of plotting to assassinate the new king during the coronation rites. Whether the accusation was true or fabricated slander, Artaxerxes believed it. Cyrus was arrested and faced imminent execution. Once again, the powerful intervention of the Queen Mother, Parysatis, proved decisive. Through emotional pleas and leveraging her influence over Artaxerxes, she secured Cyrus's pardon and, remarkably, his reinstatement to his command in Anatolia. This episode, however, only deepened the rift and made conflict almost unavoidable. Cyrus returned to Sardis feeling wronged, humiliated, and likely convinced that he could never be secure as long as Artaxerxes reigned. Possessing a powerful satrapy, immense wealth, a loyal following, and access to elite Greek mercenary soldiers, he now began secretly but methodically preparing for war. He used ongoing disputes with Tissaphernes over the Ionian cities and a fabricated plan to campaign against the rebellious Pisidians in the Taurus Mountains as cover for assembling a large army. By the spring of 401 BCE, Cyrus was ready. He marched east from Sardis with an army including over 10,000 Greek mercenaries, the force immortalized by Xenophon in the Anabasis, initially concealing his true objective. The stage was set for a devastating civil war, a clash between brothers fueled by ambition, maternal favoritism, regional power, and the lingering bitterness of the coronation plot, which would shake the foundations of the Achaemenid Empire.